Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/usingyourpower. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And for this show, I'd like to recommend The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, a book that will help you stretch your thinking. Welcome to Using Your Power. I'm David Andrew Wiebe, and joining me is
Maveen, Kaura.
Hey Maveen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I've had a pretty impactful day already today.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of sat with a friend earlier, a coworker, I guess, that I used to work with back when I was selling cars, and he had some stuff that he wanted to talk about. So, we really focused on listening to him, and found out some of the things that were bothering him, and just kind of different ways to get around them. So it was a pretty good conversation over a cup of coffee over at Starbucks here.
So you're helping him out with like selling cars and such?
No, not with cars. Just more personal stuff that he was going through right now. He's going through some, and I don't even know if he'd want me to say stuff like that. But there's some personal stuff that he's going through that he's got to deal with, and just kind of giving him some insight on different ways of thinking and just different ways to even get around it, so he can improve his personal situation. So then his work situation can also improve.
Yeah, that's a cool way to start the day.
Yeah, man. It's a
right
good
on.
2.5 hour talk. So
Absolutely. So we're going to get into today's topic, which is comfort, contentment, and complacency. I think with these words, one we mostly have positive associations with, one is mostly negative, and there's one that's a bit of both. And we're going to go ahead and deconstruct that throughout this episode. But any initial thoughts there, Mav?
No, I obviously phoned you up kind of to have an idea of what you wanted to talk about, because, the three words to me when I read them are all very similar. They all have had similar meaning. And, when I started putting some thought into it and kind of saw the vision of where you wanted to take this conversation, it really gave me, just a different way to open up my mind and just think of different things that, hopefully our listeners will be able to get quite a bit more information on what it means to be in a comfortable position, or being content, or even being complacent. So I'm excited.
I think that is a very fair point, that they are, in fact, very similar words. I'm going to propose, and we will deconstruct this further probably throughout the episode, and maybe we'll come to a slightly different conclusion by the end. But I want to propose at the front that comfort as a temporary joy, contentment as a way of life, and complacency as a pattern to avoid. Let's start with comfort as a temporary joy. And we'll definitely get deeper into this whole idea of comfort as well. And this is the word that I said at the outset, that I think it's a bit of both. I think it does have positives to it, and it also has negatives to it. You can make comfort as a goal in life. And I think if you make that your goal, it's not necessarily difficult to achieve. And I think for a lot of people, if they made an extra 10 grand a year, maybe even less than that, maybe an extra 2 grand, 3 grand, 4 grand a year would afford them that lifestyle that they want to be able to live and be able to do that comfortably. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think for people that have bigger goals, though, comfort can actually end up being the enemy of moving towards those goals. And it's not just about you when it comes to achieving goals. Really, it's about the people that you're going to help in the process, or at least I feel philosophically, it's not just about me. I am in a somewhat comfortable place in life, but I need to see beyond that. And that would enable me to make bigger dreams come true, not just for myself, for others, be able to donate more of my time, more of my money, more of my abilities in ways that I would like to do, and maybe not even ask for money. Wouldn't that be an amazing thought? Like right now, I'm not going to turn down money when I'm paid it. So, to be in a position where I don't have to, get something from it myself and be able to just give myself completely, that's also something that I want to work towards. So comfort could potentially be the enemy of that.
No, I agree with you. There's some good positives on thinking that you're in a comfortable position, and some negatives as well, right? I mean, a lot of people that we know, are happy with where they are, and that is being in a comfort position, right? And then there's people who are unhappy being comfortable about where they are. So you're right. It really depends on how you look at the situation that you're in, and I mean, everybody's going to be. They have their own, I guess, experiences on what comfort means to them based on where they are today, right? So, I mean, this is a great idea. What kind of made you think about when you first think of the word comfort, David?
Well, obviously I've raised these three words because they are similar and they have similar meanings, but they're also, talking about how they are different is really important. You think of comfort and basically you think a cushy life, you have money in the bank account perhaps, or maybe, you're just comfortable in a relationship and you've been with that person for so long. Maybe you don't necessarily see that that's the best person for you or not. And you're beyond the point of even telling. You're just like, well, that person's there, so let's keep it as is. And that can be a form of comfort. So comfort it means, you already said it, it means different things to different people. And there are different ways of defining it. But ultimately, I think what we're talking about here is just that state where, you're not going to push for change. Perhaps you're going to start resting on your laurels and not thinking about moving ahead or what the future will bring, not preparing for what's ahead of you, which you just never know what could be waiting for you on the other side of it.
Right. I like the idea of not knowing where you're headed. Sometimes if we look at it a little bit differently, sometimes we don't know where we want to go. And, we have a lot of people in our life that are, some people are pushing us towards our goals and our dreams and our aspirations. But then there's people who want us to stay in our comfort zone, right?
True.
So if you look at the actual other side of the meaning comfort, those people will actually console us and, and keep us where we are. They don't actually allow us to grow or want us to grow out of that comfort space that we're already in, right? So that's another way of looking at the actual meaning of comfort too, is consoling people and keeping them in their same spot they're already in, right? So that's kind of another word that another thought that I had on that word. But I think I know where we want to go with this conversation. It's about getting out of your comfort zone, no matter if you are successful or not. I mean, the idea is to never be comfortable where you are, right? I mean, we all hear the fact either you're growing or you're dying, right? Just like a plant, either it's going to grow, it's going to die. A plant doesn't get comfortable where it is. People should also then follow suit and not get comfortable where they are, right? We would hope, and that's our aspirations and our beliefs, that we want our listeners to continue to grow and not be comfortable at work or at home in doing just the minimums. And we really do want people to go out and get out of their comfort zone and do the maximums.
And I don't really want to push anybody to be unhappy. I think that's a different trajectory altogether. Some people might think that leaving comfort equals unhappiness, but I think there's so much joy actually that comes from stepping out of what you might consider to be comfortable, having conversations with people you wouldn't normally have, taking risks that you wouldn't normally take. Those things can actually bring they can be quite exhilarating and bring a new joy and a new energy to life. So if you feel like you're just kind of meh, I don't care. And the book that I'm reading right now, Hustle, talks about that too, with Neil Patel and the other authors. But yeah, if you're at that point where you're just going, I don't care, then it might be time to reevaluate.
Well, and the other thing too is, we got to figure out why we're comfortable as well, right? So you're right. You don't have to grow outside of it, right? But you always hear that, if you want to grow, growth is always outside of your comfort zone, right? So you have to push yourself. So if you're somebody, who's you always go within yourself and before you go outside of yourself, that's where most people are comfortable. That's okay as well. But in order to break through your fears, you have to get out of your comfort zone as well, right? So if that means going up to somebody and introducing yourself, that is really a cool way of getting out of your comfort zone and breaking those fears, right? And if you're already good at saying hi to people, it's about making yourself uncomfortable enough to go to say hi to people that you generally wouldn't say hi to, right? Or maybe putting yourself in situations that you don't like to be in. For example, if you're walking the streets of any downtown major metropolis and getting out of your comfort zone and asking the person who lives on the street, street, say, hey, you know what? If you don't mind me asking, how'd you get here? And that can really get you out of your comfort zone enough to start understanding other people.
Yeah, and like it's also a thing of default habits. So I do think that we are all wired in a way to continually expand, and we can hinder that process, and we can stop that process from happening as human beings. And I've sometimes heard this analogy of like an elastic band. You can stretch it as far as you want, but it will shrink back to its original size. Uh, Given enough time. It's like an athlete that stops training after years and years and years of training. Are they still strong? Are they still fit? Are they still healthy? Yeah, probably, as long as they haven't done anything terribly unhealthy. But if they, if you ask them whether or not they could run at the speed they're running before, jump at the height they were jumping before, or be able to land the kind of shots they were landing before, maybe not. And that's the kind of thing that can happen if you're not in peak physical condition. So I think comfort zone is the same thing. We don't always step out of it because that's just human nature. Sometimes it's just easier. When you think about whether it's easier to go out or stay in, well, it's easier to stay in. Is it easier to ask the stranger for directions, or are you going to stubbornly insist on checking your phone for it? Well, it's easier to check your phone. So
well, I think that's definitely something hit on the male ego, right? What we do is we don't want to ask directions. We don't want to look at the map. We're just going to drive in circles until we find that one turn that doesn't exist, right? So,
that's right.
But you're right. No, it is about getting out of that comfort zone and asking people for help, right? And I think that's kind of where I was kind of saying where, sometimes the people that console us and try to comfort us based on where we are have a good intention. But if we're trying to get out of that comfort zone and do more and be more than what we want to do, then we have to also be comfortable enough to understand ourselves and walk away from the people who only want to keep us at their level. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think it all comes back to fear. It's the only reason that we don't take action is because we're afraid of something. And I've heard it described as the thin veil of fear. That's really easy for somebody that's courageous to say, but it is true. There's nothing else. There's nothing stopping you except for fear.
Right. And, the other thing I think, other than fear, too, is sometimes it's our negative self-talk that keeps us in our comfort zones as well, right? I mean, we can say whatever we want to ourselves because we feel we're not harming anybody until we start talking and we notice that a lot of the words are negative, and our own negativity can keep us in our comfort zone, right? I think positive words will get you out of your comfort zone if truly that is what you want. And I think people listening to the show probably want to get out of their comfort zones and make something of themselves by using their power and able to do that. And using the power of your tongue will allow you to do that as long as you speak in a positive way, right? So I think having the right words with the want to change is going to be huge too.
So self-talk is actually another huge topic, and I agree. It's a really important one, and to pay attention to what you're saying to yourself. But I think it's also rooted in fear. Essentially, if you say to yourself, "Well, I can't do that," that's fear. If you're saying to yourself, "I can't build this business, I can't talk to this person," where is that rooted in? It's rooted in fear. So, I agree. The effects of self-talk, definitely pay attention to them, but the root is often deeper.
Well, it is definitely deeper, right? It could be an experience that you've had and that keeps you in your comfort zone, right? I mean, I find for myself, sometimes I am my own worst enemy, right? I'll stop myself based on the words I say to myself, right? Am I afraid to go meet people? No, not really. I can actually go talk to anybody and I'll have deep conversations and have intellectual conversations with, a person from the street all the way up to a CEO of any major corporation. I can do that, but it's that fear that I give myself by the words I tell myself. Like, I don't know if this guy really wants to talk to me. Well, I'm putting myself in a fear position without even knowing the true story that maybe that guy that I want to go talk to is actually more afraid of his own shadow, right? But he just doesn't show it because they can carry it better, right? He's more comfortable in keeping that as a hidden fact about themselves, right? So I personally feel, self-talk can get you to places you want to go, but yeah, you do also have to know what the root of your fear is as well, right?
Yes. And I also want to challenge this to both of us actually to think a little bit deeper, because we have this common saying or common term, comfort zone. But really, what is that? This comfort radius that you have, does it just default to a certain comfort zone, or is it just imagined? I think we need to think a bit deeper and talk a bit deeper on this idea of comfort zone, because I'm not totally sold on it myself.
Well, I know for myself, comfort zones, my comfort zones are based on what I believe to be my safe areas, right? Mm-hmm. So I think everybody has that where they make their comfort zone the easiest place for them to go and not be hurt in any way at all, right? So if it's physically hurt or mentally hurt or exhausted through other people. So, we all go to our different comfort zones. Some people go sit on the couch. Some people will go meditate. Some people will go into nature. Some people read a good book. Some people will go talk to a friend, and not only on the phone, but actually meet somebody for a coffee, right? It's based on where they are at that time, I think, too, right? So I think we all go into comfort zones differently. We all come out of our comfort zones differently as well, especially as men and women, right? We all, men for sure, we just want to be left alone, go figure out our own problems out, where women will say, you know what, I'm not comfortable. I'm going to go talk to somebody about it, right? So we have to look at the different sexes as well and the way they, come out and in and out of comfort zones.
So part of it is at least partly rooted in our own safety and perseverance as human beings. I guess a lot of our actions really are dictated by that, base instinct that exists in probably most human beings and animals as well. So that makes sense. And yeah, everything else is definitely shaped by media, by your upbringing, by your parents, and that kind of thing too. We'll have to maybe even come back to that topic of comfort zones, because I think there might be a better analogy even than that. But, this is a conversation that's a little bit separate from that. So we'll come back to it again when we have had a chance to think more deeply on it. We'll get into contentment now. And I think contentment as a way of life is a good thing. And this is what I was saying earlier about not necessarily always choosing to be unhappy. I think contentment just means that you are at peace with your present circumstances. Doesn't mean that you're satisfied with them, because you might be working towards something more, or there might be things about your current situation that you actually want to change and move beyond. So it doesn't mean that you're satisfied. It's like you're at peace with who and where you are, and you're grateful for it. And I think gratitude is such a powerful thing, but you're not satisfied with it.
And it's funny, I'll challenge you on that thought, because when you read the definition of it, it really does say that you are satisfied with the results of being content, right? So it's actually very interesting that, I can see where you're coming from, saying you're not necessarily satisfied. You're happy currently with your status, but you're working on moving to another level, right? Just like, any entrepreneur, I think you have to, as you build towards your business, you have to find places and plateaus where you can sit and rest and take a look at all the path that you've taken and be happy with that, be content with everything you did to get you to where you are, plan, and then continue to grow, right? So I agree with you in that respect, but according to what the dictionary's definition was, it's saying that you're satisfied. And I think any real entrepreneur would never be satisfied with their results. They always want to keep growing from what they've been able to create. And I think real entrepreneurs will also then want to not stay in that comfort zone either, just going back a little bit as well, and want to continue to get out of their contentment zone. Not saying that it's a bad thing to stay in it, because it's okay to be content with where you are in life for as long as you need to, but as long as I think you eventually get out of that place.
I don't know if actually the definition is entirely in conflict with what I'm saying, because it says being satisfied with a state of contentment. So I think you can be satisfied with contentment, but it doesn't necessarily mean to be satisfied with where you are, even though the word satisfied is in the definition. So in that sense, I don't know if it's entirely in conflict, but I definitely hear what you're saying.
Well, it's funny, when I looked up the definition of all three words, they actually all said that you are happy with where you are currently. It's actually pretty funny. That's why when I phoned you, I was just really wanting to know what you want to talk about, because when I read the definitions, they all sounded the same. And obviously, as we start digging deeper into the words, we can start seeing the meanings may be similar, but they're very different on how people take action based on where they are, if they're in any one of those three category of words.
And I think that's a fair point to raise, and also a fair argument. And I think it's definitely worth delving into the fact that, the dictionary defines them in a similar way. I think words tend to go a lot deeper than that, without actually going into like an etymology dictionary, without actually exploring how the English language was constructed. We can't really know the full meaning of it. We just have kind of this overall accepted standards for words within dictionaries. Here I am challenging dictionaries, but I think that could also be a trap, as far as it could limit your understanding of what each word means. I think it's very good for us to take a look at that, especially in context of three very similar words. But without going deeper into them, I don't think we can really flesh them out.
No, for sure, and one of the things when, about going deeper and really understanding what I think contentment was, I go look at my past history, and I look at, all the different jobs I've worked at. And I find sometimes even employers are content with hiring the people that may not be qualified for positions because they need to fill seats, right? So that was one of the things I thought of, that people don't necessarily always qualify for what they do. It's something that I mentioned in previous episodes as well. But, the management will hire them because they're really, saying, oh, they can do a pretty good job, so we'll keep them. They're happy with what they do, but not, allowing themselves to find people that can excel beyond their own, maybe, where they are themselves in their own self-image as well.
I guess that could also be an issue of settling, but like part of one of the joys of life, and maybe one of the fears at times, is not knowing what's coming next. It's almost like, I've had this experience too, where I feel like I'm following a path. I almost feel like I know what's coming next, what's happening next. And in the last 2 years or so, I've come to a point where I have no idea what's happening next. And I know that we're working on these projects. I know I'm working on my business. I know I'm freelance writing for a lot of people, but there's been a lot of unpredictable, random things happen too. And so, that can be one of the interesting things about life. And if you waver, or if you allow yourself to waver, and I think we all mature emotionally over time, but you could be weak emotionally, you will begin to waver up and down, up and down, up and down, because of the challenges and various things that life gives you. So it's really hard to achieve a state of contentment. But I've talked about before about how being peaceful at work for me is the ideal state, because I don't feel like I'm rushed or hurried, and I feel like I can focus better on what I'm doing when I'm in a peaceful state. And I think that's partly what I mean by contentment as well.
Right. And I do like the idea of wanting to achieve more, but I think we're just like with anything, right? Like I was mentioning about, if you're climbing that ladder and, you got to sometimes stay at the plateau and then kind of keep going up that ladder, it's kind of what you do, right? And everything has to be looked at in a time frame as well, right? So you might be happy with where you are today, but I think most people are happy, but they continue to work towards something better, or work to gain something more, either at work or in their business, in their family life, in their spiritual life, whichever one it is, right? But it does take time to grow from where you are into a new place, and then be content with where you are there, and then to continue to learn more and grow some more, and then move to the next level, and then find more contentment there as you continue that journey, and as you continue that step by step to where you ultimately want to be.
And being frustrated with that, I think, would actually slow you down in a way, from getting you to where you want to go. Just constantly fighting against the currents, and, not seeing the current challenges as just stepping stones onto a new you. And in a way, life will present those things if you are on a path of growth. I can't really speak to if you're not on a path of growth, because that's not me. I can only speak to what I know, but I know that when I'm pursuing something more, then these challenges come along kind of out of nowhere, and I think they're there as a test, and to see if I'm going to continue in spite of all these setbacks. So the flip side of contentment being discontentment, which at times can actually be a powerful thing. I think there are ways to use your power if you are discontent with the situation. I think that's probably why, some of the people, the revolutionaries of our time are pushing for changes in the world, whether it's against slavery or against racism, and all these things still exist in the world. And so being discontent with that I think has its place.
I'm going to go back just a slight bit, just with what you said about frustration, right?
Sure.
I think frustration can bring discontentment. I think it's a great place to be, because if you allow yourself to be frustrated, but you take positive results or positive action to gain better results, and then it's a good thing to be frustrated, because I think through frustration do you learn. But if you allow the frustration to overtake you, then definitely it's a bad thing, right? But it really depends on how you deal with it, right? And how you deal with your stress. Everybody deals with stress differently. I know, I've been at different jobs and I've been frustrated with my own results, but it's what steps I took after I realized why I was frustrated to get myself out of those positions, and to then do much better in my job and in my employment, increase my paycheck as well, right? So until I had the idea, hey, you know what, I don't want to be content with where I am. I am in discontent, with where I am right now. Only then was I able to change my position.
That's a really interesting point, and I think so. There is an argument for being discontent as well. Did you have any other points on contentment, Mav?
Well, I got a bunch of other ones, but I mean, we can use them in all the different places and maybe connecting things together. So absolutely, don't keep going.
Great. And so we could move into complacency as a pattern to avoid. I don't know if there's a lot of power in complacency, but maybe we'll end this discussion having found what that power is potentially. Complacency means to rest on your laurels and not try any harder. You often find people that are complacent lose their jobs because they thought they were secure forever. You often find them losing their spouses or significant other because they weren't doing anything to woo that person. They weren't putting in any effort into building that relationship and communicating with them. You find people that are complacent lose their businesses, lose their investments, all kinds of things. Doesn't always happen that way. Complacency has ramifications too, but there's definitely bigger consequences at times from being too complacent.
No, you're right. And again, when I read the dictionary on the definition on this, it said you were happy with your current results. And sometimes people are happy with their results. But I think the other part of that, what the dictionary said on the meaning, was that they don't realize there's a danger in that, right? So thinking that your $12 an hour job will continue to satisfy you for the rest of your life. I mean, it might sound great in theory. You may not be someone who wants a lot, but if you don't understand that inflation will eat away at your bank account, eat away at your money, that $12 an hour job is really, it's going to be harmful for your future wants and your future needs as well, right? So I think if people understand what that means, they would go ahead and take care of themselves in a way, and not be comfortable again, and not be content with where they are, right? I think complacency really is the ending of where you end up if you allow yourself to get comfortable and then be content with where you are, if you're in a negative way of looking at it, right? I think there's a potentially a good side at looking at complacency. If you're someone who has millions and millions of dollars, and let's say you earn a residual income, you might be complacent. You may not mind that that's the type of income you make, but some people get in a place where they don't necessarily mind their own business. I think we were kind of talking about owning your own race course. We didn't coin that term, but once you think you own it, sometimes people give that ownership to somebody else, saying somebody else will take care of it. And because they spend years and years and years not worrying about it, someone else will take advantage of their complacency as well.
Yeah. I like me right now with the music entrepreneur, I am fairly, content with the traffic growth. I'm content with my email subscriber growth, but I am discontent with the sales. I want to increase the amount of revenue that's coming in and profit ultimately that's coming in through the business. And I think that's like a healthy discontent, but it's also just seeing the next steps. The definition of an entrepreneur is really knowing what the next move to make is. And I think that's what, life is uncertain, like I was saying earlier, so it can be really hard to know what the right decision is. And sometimes you just got to take a leap of faith because you really don't know. But entrepreneurship is definitely built on just going, this is what we're going to do next.
Right. And I think you have a good concept too, right? I mean, building your business brand and building your business over the last year or so, it's, since you've, I think, been going really hard on it. I know you've been going for a couple of years before that, but, just conversations we've had and just showing, things that, we can try, and you've been able to implement those ideas, right? I mean, you are someone who I think when you looked at your own business and you said, you know what, I need to take care of myself. No one else is going to build your business. Yeah. No one else is going to build your website, for you, especially at the phase you're at right now, right? You're in that growth phase of your business. You're building that traffic. But if you had said, no, I'm going to leave it to other people to do it for me, then you're not really taking ownership either, right, of what needs to be done. And I know you personally, I don't think you would ever allow that to happen, but there are a lot of people out there that get, comfortable with where they are, and they're happy, having 300, 400, 500 people come to their website, and they're more happy with those initial results. But if that's not your initial goal, if your initial goal is to have sales and create an income, then you shouldn't allow yourself to be complacent in a way to say, it's false. It's really building your hopes on false evidence.
Mm-hmm. Ownership is huge, because I think they actually call it the 30-second miracle, where the moment that you realize or decide that you are responsible for everything that's ever happened in your life. And that's not necessarily true in the sense of there were factors you cannot control. You didn't necessarily control the fact that your parents decided to have you. And certainly before your mind was developed and your body was developed, you didn't have the choice of making autonomous choices for yourself. But still, looking at it as something, it's actually an empowering thing. People actually look at it the other way, where it's and I did too, like where it's a fear-based thing. If I take ownership for everything, well, that means that it's my fault that I'm where I'm at. And then I'm saying, yes, that's exactly right. It's your fault that you are where, or thanks to you that you are where you're at.
Right. And that's a great way of looking at it, David, too. I think, obviously, I know me and you both, we have a really good head on our shoulders, really understand, right? So what our words will mean to us, right? So even if we realize, if we're going to say some negative statements based on our own performance, I think we realize that we correct that right away, or at least in the conversations we have with each other, we'll tell the other person, hey, you need to correct what you're saying, because, if you continually say what you're saying, you're only going to get the results you're speaking into existence, right? But I do like the concept of what you're saying. One of the things that I thought, was thinking about complacency is, why would someone want to be in that mindset, and the thing I came up with, it was a word called ego. Some people don't want to listen to what other people say. Even other people may be telling them, hey, you know what, you may want to get out of this industry, or you may want to leave that job, or hey, have you considered, I think your wife is cheating on you, but people don't want to listen to what other people have to say. They think they're right all the time, that even if something bad would happen, they could deal with the situation. I think it's that they come from a place of ego sometimes, and they don't allow other people to influence them, because they think they know more than somebody else, and then they tend to, sometimes make bigger mistakes that you see happen in business all the time, right? You have a boss will call a meeting. Employees will kind of give their information and give an idea of what they think, and then the boss will not implement any of those ideas. But if you realize that the employees probably have the frontline access to all your customers, you should listen to what your employees have to say. You may not implement everything they say, but you can implement ideas or expand on those ideas. And the bosses who don't do that, I think, are coming from a place of ego.
And part of defining complacency, I think, is just you believe you're in a position where you're not threatened. So nothing could change in a negative way. You don't believe that it will change in a negative way, even if contrary to evidence that might suggest otherwise. I was watching a movie recently. I don't remember the title because I didn't even like it. And so I'm very unlikely to remember it. But it was like a futuristic movie, and like probably in the near future, really, where they were beginning to explore, what VR was going to mean for our future, which is a very timely and relevant topic to be discussing. But I feel like the main character was very complacent, and he ends up losing his job by the end of the movie, but also regaining his job in a way, because of all the experiments he was doing with his VR, with all of his fantasies and distractions. And so they kind of come back to him and say, this is pretty fascinating stuff. They want to implement it. So, you're hired back on.
Right. So based on what you're saying on this movie, do you think that even if you're complacent and don't worry about some negative consequences, that good things can still happen?
Maybe they can. I kind of have a tendency of thinking like long term, that's still not really going to work out, right? Because over the course of the movie, he kind of loses his girlfriend, sort of gains her back by the end, loses his job, kind of gets it back, but like him and his girlfriend had just made the decision to go out and live in the country instead of trying to live this very difficult and stressful city life. He'd resorted to a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs, not for any good reason that I can see. One of the reasons I hate the movie, because I don't think there's any good, there's nothing prompting him to resort to that kind of behavior besides maybe the people that he's surrounding himself with. So in a way, yes, I think it is possible that sometimes that can result in something good.
I think you bring up an interesting point. I'm not sure if you even picked up on it, but you said, in the movie, the character is doing drugs and he's in alcohol, and then the people around him, I guess he's comfortable with it. So,
yes.
I guess your association is also huge with the people you hang out with and the people you decide to keep those relationships with, right? So if they're doing certain things, you tend to maybe do the same things as well, right? So if your friends are all drinking, you tend to want to drink as well. If your friends are doing drugs or any sort of, maybe they're, taking advantage of prescription pharmaceuticals, you tend to want to also do that because it's a comfort level to want to be able to connect to other people. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think so. And it makes me think of this example, which is, I believe it was John Eldridge and Gary Barkalow. They did a presentation on desire, and John Eldridge wrote a book called Desire, and it's amazing how so many of how foundational it was for me on my personal development journey. It's something that I keep going back to, and I can't remember if it was John or Gary, but they were talking about, I think it was Gary. He was talking about this relationship that he had with somebody else, and every time they would call each other up and go, what's going on right now, or what are you reading, or what are you learning, and at some point that just stopped. Like, he was on the phone, and they had this really strong relationship between each other, and when he got on the phone with this guy, his response was just, oh, I don't know. And at that point, it was like his heart was broken, and they just didn't talk any further. So, whatever it was that they were bonding over and connecting over was then taken away. That's not a reason to end a relationship, but sometimes it can, especially in terms of communication. If we're willing to communicate, you can continue on and build that relationship. But if you're not willing, then it's very difficult.
So would you agree with me that we, as a human beings, as a human race, as co-workers and workers and friends and family members, we find security in what words people use with us?
Security in words. Yes, I think so. Like, maybe there's something about it that must resonate with us in a way, and that's why we're around the people that we're around.
Right. So if we find security in the words that we use with ourselves or what people say to us, I find one of the things that I was thinking about was, those secure words allow us to not grow either, because we're always being told, hey, you're doing a great job, don't worry about it, right? I remember there were some great ways, and people don't course correct when they feel secure, right? They just say, oh, I'm in a great place right now. Their friends will allow them to feel comfortable through the words they use with us as well. And then we'll feel like in a place where we don't want to have to change. We become complacent because of other people's words are very secure to us, right? I think sometimes we do need a kick in the butt and people to tell us the truth and not just give us the sugar coatings of, oh, don't worry, man, everything will be okay. And those secure words make us feel good, absolutely, but they don't really show us what the true nature of what's about to happen to us.
It's interesting, right? Because I think with negatives, you do something wrong and people will instantly jump on it and give you a ton of negative feedback. With positives, unless you're doing something extraordinary, people will just, keep silent most of the time. If you're doing a good job, they won't say anything. This is kind of funny. My grandma messaged me the other day, and she says, I watched this thing that you had on YouTube, and it was really good, but I didn't really care for the intermission. I was like, I have no idea what you just watched because I have a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I have no idea what you're talking about with intermission, because if she was listening to Using Your Power, then we don't have an intermission that I'm aware of. So
no, we definitely don't.
So
was she even watching you, or some guy that looked kind of like you?
Yeah, it could be that, Everybody's mistaking me for doing lots of things. Oh, well, you can credit me with a bunch of stuff I haven't done.
Well, that's why I always say I write all the anonymous quotes, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. We like quote attribution is a whole funny topic too, because now at this point, with the internet and everything, we don't necessarily know who said what, or in some cases they didn't actually say the things we think they said, and we just use it as a story or an illustration.
Right. And I do like one of the things that you said, even with your grandma, the story of, she's going on. I thought that was kind of cool, right? She got out of her comfort zone. You think grandma, I think 60, 70 years old.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
easy.
You see the people getting out of their comfort zone and embracing technology and
she's like that.
Yeah, but it's kind of neat that she would do that. So I thought that was cool. She's the type of person that says, hey, you know what? Even though I may not be able to use this for future success, but I'm still going to learn it. I want to know what this is about. I want to know what kind of information is out there, right? So I think that was kind of a little cool story of how people get out of their comfort zone.
My family wants to spy on me too. To some extent, maybe. No, I think we're all curious about all of our family members, right? We care for each other, so I get it. But yeah, I agree. She is that kind of person. She totally connects with technology. She uses a MacBook. She's probably on Facebook more than I am. So there you go.
I think I heard a stat like that too. There's a lot of older people, older generation people on Facebook connecting to people. Mm-hmm. Don't know necessarily why. If maybe they have nothing else to do, or they just really find and really embrace the technology behind Facebook and how it allows them to connect to people that they've always had a great connection with.
It could be an issue of mobility as well, because I know my grandma, she was told she could drive within town. She lives in a small town, but that she couldn't drive in a city like Calgary where we live. So there you go. Sometimes it's a mobility thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. So I just want to take this conversation a little bit different way. I know we've talked about all three of our C's today.
Yes.
So maybe I'm going to throw some words out at you. You kind of give me what your thoughts are compared to some of the C's. I know we didn't really practice this.
Oh, I feel like it's a psychology session or something.
Yeah, it's like holding up the picture and see what do you see on the ink blot exactly. Kind of idea. We talked about being satisfied in life. So how do you think comfort, contentment, and complacency really works with being satisfied or dissatisfied in life?
Yes. Well, I think as kind of we've indicated throughout, there are advantages to being satisfied, and there are advantages to being dissatisfied with a situation. I kind of like contentment as a way of life because of not being satisfied with the situation, but not vehemently opposing where you are, because you are where you are, and I think it all begins with a point of acceptance. You have to accept where you are to move on to where you want to go. So being grateful for what you do have and not thinking about or worrying about the things that you don't have. So, satisfaction in relation to all of these, obviously, in some cases, it could be totally opposed, but comfort for some people could mean satisfaction. Contentment for many people could mean satisfaction. Complacency, unfortunately, for better or for worse, could mean satisfaction for some people. So there is obviously a close relation.
Right. And what do you feel about when people say, people who are content really don't want to reach their full potential? They're just happy to be where they are. What do you say to those people?
Depends on how you interpret it, for sure. I would agree with that statement if you replace the word complacency, but I wouldn't totally agree if the word was contentment. A healthy discontentment for, things that are going wrong in the world, injustices, major problems, having a discontent for that will sometimes move you to action, and so that's the right thing. But I think if it's really hard for us to move forward in life if we constantly stay in this state of, I'm not grateful for what I have, and I don't care, and I want this, and this feeling of entitlement and all that kind of stuff begins to permeate us. And so I don't think that works.
Right. So what are your thoughts on when people say, I'm comfortable where I am. I don't really need more in life?
Well, maybe you don't. I mean, I would say that you're going to live a fairly static life in the sense that not much changes. It's often, I think my one of my older pastors often said, like, you might have 14 years of experience, but it might just be the same 1 year experience repeated over and over again. So many people do live that life of the same year repeated 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, maybe more.
Wow. So really not experiencing any growth, but kind of just doing the same job. In that example, it sounds like the people may be complacent and really just don't really want to work. They just kind of doing what it takes to get by.
Yeah. And it's so easy. I mean, because like input. So when DVD collections were still kind of a thing, what do you think I often watched? The DVDs I owned, right?
Right.
So, but that can, over time, can become a pattern of complacence. Now you are, I don't know if that's a word, but now you're absorbing the same things over and over. So you're just repeating it to your mind. Your subconscious is picking it up, and now it's like beginning to program you in a way. So even on like an input level, what you read, what you look at, or like people that are in that pattern of life, where you go on vacation, have you changed that up recently? Have you chosen to go to somewhere like Italy instead of Hawaii every year? Have you done anything differently, just as like an exploration? And if not, like, you're probably not experiencing much exhilaration for life.
Right. And again, with that example, it really depends on why the people choose to go to Hawaii over and over again. It's actually a very interesting thing. As soon as you start saying that,
Hawaii is amazing, by the way.
It's exactly what I said to myself. And it's funny, even when we had spoken to people in Hawaii when I was there in May of 2016 here, we were actually speaking to people who had visited many times. And there are people that they say, we go about 20, 30 times we've been to Hawaii. Interesting enough, like, you can go maybe 20 times and maybe pick 10 times to go elsewhere. So, and maybe gain some different perspectives and maybe gain a different appreciation for Hawaii as well, right? Or whatever place you enjoy to go. But I think a lot of people do get comfortable going to the same place because they know what to expect. And a lot of people don't like surprises either.
Exactly. No, it's true. And maybe there is a good reason for going to Hawaii 20, 30, 40 times. I'm not saying that there isn't. And I think, in a sense, it'd be enjoyable. But yeah, I think unless you're picking up something new or getting something different from it every time, it's just rote. It's just routine.
Right. So what do you say to people, David, that say, I don't want to compare myself and my results to other people's results. I'm content with what I do.
Comparison is the root of all unhappiness. So I would urge you not to compare yourself to others. It's the same with me. I could compare myself to Pat Flynn or James Schramko or Neil Patel or somebody that is more known, more successful, more, ahead of where I might be right now. And that is going to breed dissatisfaction. And so I always have to keep coming back to that. This is my story. I don't know what my story is. It's not over yet. It's still being written, I think. But, even when I'm making music, I just go like, I have to make my music. Even though I've listened to all these bands and artists that I really love, and I've maybe learned how to play music the way they play music, I still have to go like, I'm not Harum Scarum. I'm not Remy Shand. I got to make the music that I make and be true to myself. And maybe I will in some ways pay tribute to those other artists that I love, but I still got to be me. So, comparing is only, and why duplicate what others have already done? It's just, an echo chamber. So.
Right. So what do you say to people who say, I don't necessarily want to compare my success to somebody else, but I want to achieve the success of somebody else. And that's why I compare myself or look up to the person I want to compare myself to?
Well, I think it's good to have inspiration. I just think it's a tough road to try to duplicate and copy everything that someone has done. And second of all, is that actually like flattering to them in any way? Would they still respect you for doing exactly what you did or what they did, or would they rather you have taken your own path as far as choosing a topic or a particular way of approaching your specific business? And third of all, have you talked to them? Because they're human just like you, and you might soon realize that they're not that different than you. They've just made a few different decisions along the way to get to where they are. So yeah, you can absolutely look up to those people, listen to what they have to share with you, because there's a lot of good things. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't listen to James Franco pretty frequently and talk to you, Maveen, and have other, a lot of other great input that's helped me to where I am. But it wasn't any one thing. I'm more or less committed to listening to only a certain set of podcasts or reading a certain set of books now, but it wasn't any one thing. It was a combination of things that got me to where I am.
So it's almost like refining the process to finding the right people to influence you based on where you are right now. That's something I've done myself, right? I recently wanted to start learning more about online business and drop shipping. So I actually stopped listening to certain podcasts I was listening to and found new podcasts to listen to so I can learn a new set of knowledge from people who had already done that same business or had been successful in that business as well, right? So it was really getting out of my comfort zone of listening to the same 5 or 10 different podcasts, the same speakers over and over again, and researching and looking for new information. I think this is something we need to continually do, right? Because even if you switch topics of learning about business and continue learning just business and sales, and it's all we focus on. But if we switch topics and start learning about art for a little while, we might start thinking a little bit different and start getting new ideas of how the conversations from those art podcasts can actually influence us and help us understand our business podcasts that we were listening to a lot better. Because sometimes what I find is we get so comfortable listening to the same speaker, we're not necessarily taking in the message anymore. We're just putting it on as background noise, and we don't necessarily always absorb every good detail and all those little nuggets that the speakers are giving us, right? Because we're so just used to putting it on. It's an automatic thing, right? So when you leave the genre that you're listening to and then kind of go back to it, you'll start picking up stuff in different ways that you were never picking it up the first time.
I really like that. And a note of caution, it will take time. It took me, I don't know how long I've been listening to podcasts, maybe not quite 10 years, but like 8 years or 9 years possibly. It took me a while to find the ones that I really feel like I get value from. And I still occasionally find ones that I want to add to my list or ones that I want to remove from my list. So that refining process is never over. But I feel like I've found some good sources that anchor me. Like up until that recent point, I really didn't feel anchored in the things that I was learning. And now it starts to make sense. So oftentimes we're missing something in that foundation that we needed. It's just like building a house. So, if the foundation isn't solid, then you building on a house on it could be dangerous. You might lose that house. But fortunately, we're human beings, and with business, you can still go back and repair the foundation as long as it's not a literal foundation.
Well, even if it was a literal foundation, you can still always repair it, right?
You still could. Yeah.
You may have to move from where you are, and that's figuratively and literally. Sometimes you have to move from where you are, right? Move out of your comfort zones.
Movement.
Movement is going to get you there. So my last question on kind of my little spur of the moment questioning of you, and just kind of picking your brain here, is what do you say to the people who say, you know what, I make enough money right now. I'm happy where my business is. I can satisfy my family's needs. How about you look at all 3 C's and kind of give us a quick example of how that concept plays with each one of those?
So you could certainly be comfortable with that. Like you've probably achieved a degree of comfort if you've made it to that point, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. In terms of contentment, absolutely. I think contentment could totally apply to that situation where you're going, this is awesome. I feel good about it. I'm grateful for it. I'm able to provide for myself, my family, have a successful business, and complacency could potentially factor into it if you're not looking at how to continue to secure your future, or in some cases diversify. I'm not saying you absolutely have to diversify, but if you have one income source, and let's say it's dependent entirely on Google traffic, we all know what can happen. Google could one day decide your site shouldn't rank for that keyword anymore, and all of a sudden you're getting half the traffic or 3/4 of the traffic you used to get. How's that going to affect your sales negatively? So if we're not looking to the future, we can become complacent. What if your product is not future proof? What if it's not evergreen? That could be an issue as well. So it's not going to last forever, and that product is only a timely thing. you could say it's things like, CDs would have been like that, right? Joining a CD club, that was a thing people did. And you got a bunch of CDs for a cheap price, but that's not a business model anymore because CDs are mostly irrelevant.
Right. And, just going back into some of our vault of, episodes that we've recorded, if we look at stuff like network marketing, for example, one of the things network marketing teaches is to get out of your comfort zone and go meet people and not be complacent on where you are, right? And when we did our episode on different ways to make $100, again, that's the same concept, right? To kind of keep your mind fresh, your thoughts fresh, always looking for new ways to do new things and continually grow yourself as well, right? So if you haven't had an opportunity to look and listen to those episodes, absolutely look for those episodes on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, or our website if it's up by the time this episode goes up. We'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I thank you for kind of entertaining me in that. I really wanted to just pick your brain because I know this is something that...
well, hopefully I didn't go too far off course.
No, I think, you're great, right? I mean, the examples are what I think help teach people that are listeners on what kind of they're going through as well, right? So I think the examples are great, to help with that. So one of the things I wanted to speak to was, I think one of the things that allow people to, stay in their comfort zone, and I think the word comfort really speaks to me. Potentially, maybe that's where I am. I know I'm not complacent. I know I'm not content, and that's one of the things as well, right? I think my personality sometimes doesn't allow me to be content. Although,
I do hear from that from several people. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I should allow myself to be happy and content with what I've accomplished, right? But it's always, I know I can do more. I know I could have done something better, and that's just maybe my personality. But it's also things that I'm teaching myself to be better and have a better understanding of that. Just because I've been able to accomplish something, it's slow down. And like they say, smell the roses, enjoy that journey before I continue full steam ahead, regroup, recharge, recheck my goals and see if I'm still heading in that direction. What if maybe something's changed, maybe something in technology has changed and now I need to take a small change of course of action, right? So these are certain things that I think should look at. And these are the things that I know I'm starting to look at more and more each and every day.
And celebrate. Celebration really works, and even celebrating in advance sometimes can be powerful too. Just celebrating the victories that are ahead. You may not know what they are. Taking a moment to celebrate in advance. I've done this many times recently. It's like, okay, well, I'm at Moxie's with a new friend. I have no idea how I wound up here because like a day or two ago, I didn't even know this guy. But there we are. So I celebrated in advance and I ordered myself a dessert on top of the main course. And I said, why not? I've been wanting to come here. I've been meaning to have one of these. I'm going to enjoy it. And we did. So it was a good time. But yeah, that's how fast life can change sometimes.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I think that allow, and we were trying to keep this in a positive note as well, but I think you have to understand what keeps you comfortable, what keeps you, not necessarily wanting to move forward. I know people listening to this show here are, go-getters. They want to learn. They want to explore within themselves. And I think that's something we have to understand, and these might be deeper topics to talk about later, but these are definitely things we can bring up right now. Sometimes the ideas are all conscious, or they're unconscious thoughts that we have that we don't even realize that have been programmed into us, and we just kind of do what we're kind of told to do, or things that we've seen our parents do. We just kind of consciously or unconsciously do those things, right? And I think sometimes people are, afraid to succeed as well, because, and that's what leaves us in our comfort zone, because I think I've had this conversation with you. If not, I know I've had this conversation with a lot of different people. Actually, the same gentleman that I met today, I asked him, I said, are you afraid to fail or are you afraid to succeed? And he's like, well, I'm in the middle. And I said, well, that's fine. If you're in the middle, that's okay. I said, automatically, you've chosen that you're afraid to succeed because you're afraid to take action. Right? I think most people are afraid to take action because they know they can succeed, but they're afraid of the work, or maybe they just don't understand the work that it's going to take to be a success, right? So I know for me, and definitely I want to hear what you have to say. For me, I'm afraid to succeed. I'm not afraid of failure. I've experienced failure, so I'm not afraid of getting more failure because I understand it will take me to different levels, right? So I'm comfortable with that. I'm content with understanding how that works for me. So I know for me, I'm afraid to succeed. So the best thing I have to do is step out of my own way once I understood what it meant, and now I can finally go towards my goals. And this is one of the things that we started, right? It was even podcasting with yourself, right? It was something that I was scared to do because I was like, wow, how hard is it going to be? And really, now that we got a couple of mics set up,
now that we're going,
yeah, is it really that hard? I know if you listen to episode 1, super nervous, didn't really know what to say, didn't know what to expect. Now I think we're on episode 16 or 17 here.
17.
Yeah, so wow, 17.
I know.
And I think the words come out naturally. I'm not nervous anymore. But what was I afraid of? I was afraid to fail because I knew I could succeed. So that's some of my thoughts there as well.
An entrepreneur, a friend of mine, recently asked me, you ever thought about what it'd be like to have everything you want? And I was like you, Maveen. I think I was in the same place. It was a fear of succeeding. Well, what's the point in doing anything once you're there? But to me, and I've heard this a long time ago, but it resonates for me now more than ever. Go as far as you can go, and then you'll see further. So without being there, you can't prejudge what that experience is going to be like. I achieved the goal of being, and I set this goal for myself early this year, was I'm going to be completely full-time freelancer at home, and I achieved it, and I'm there. But like some of the things is nothing changed. Like everything changed, but nothing changed. It's still life, and you go as far as you can. You see further. So having achieved some big goals like that, I can now see that the fear of success is, there'll be more ahead for you once you get there.
Absolutely. And, and something I was also thinking about as you're mentioning to me too, and to our listeners, sometimes we're not only afraid of success, we actually don't mind moving forward into it. But, we forget sometimes the principles of staying where you are also, I'll put it in quotations, they're biblical, or they're all from all different religions as well. I think if we look at it as the word of God, and no matter what religion you are or what religion you're not, I think even if you're an atheist, you could understand if you continue to stay where you are, it is a sin to yourself, and it's a sin to maybe the universe, or a sin to the person that you say that you believe in, or the words that you say you believe. If you don't take action to be the best you can be, then really you're doing a disservice to the person that that you say you believe in, and this God that you believe in. Or even if you just believe in your own abilities, you don't believe in God, you believe in yourself, hey, no problem. You're doing a disservice to yourself then by being content and being complacent and just staying where you are, or being comfortable where you are, right? Not, again, we've gone through the positives of being complacent and the and the negatives of being them, but again, looking at what you can accomplish based on what you said, I think if we look at life's journey, we're never really done taking our steps, right? The journey of a 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and that's kind of a cool thing because it's the truth, right? We'll continue taking those certain steps day in, day out, and we might have a tree in front of us, and we got to veer off the path for a second. We got to then come right back on the path once we pass that tree. But it's if the first time you see a tree and you just stop your journey and go back, you don't even never really get to find out what you could have accomplished.
If you're listening and going, I'm through and through a 9-to-5 guy or 9-to-5 gal, and you can't imagine anything else, awesome. Then begin to think about how you can do that 9-to-5 job better today, this week, or this next month. Take some time to think about what it would mean to do your job just a little bit better, just a little bit different. How could you add a little bit more value to the company? If you're an athlete working hard to become maybe a pro, maybe not even a pro, but at a competitive level, what's one thing you could do today that'll make a difference? And really every day, how can you stay consistent with that one little thing? If you're a business owner, then try to do one thing in your business every day. People get stuck on this especially like online entrepreneurs. They work for themselves. They're at home. Instead of defeating yourself, just do one thing today. Get on Twitter today. If you're not on Twitter yet, get on Facebook tomorrow. If you're not on Facebook, write a blog post the next day if you haven't written a blog post.
Right. And that's a great way to get out of your comfort zone, right? Even if,
Yes.
if you're looking to work out and you're, like you said, a great thing, right? I mean, we look up to the different athletes that we enjoy watching on TV and the sports that we all enjoy, but you have to realize that these athletes didn't stay where they were. If they had, we wouldn't really know about them, right? So same thing if you own your own business and you're looking to grow and you're looking to be the best business owner out there and have the most business and really take, the money out of your competition's pocket, then you have to go out there and study and be the best at what you do. You have to understand what your competition does better than you. And that's what athletes do. They understand how to play their position better than anybody else that can attempt to take that position away from them, because, I mean, more and more every year, people keep coming, right? And Michael Jordan didn't stop being the best once he became the best. He kept playing, he kept practicing, he was in the gym, for what I understood, before anybody got there. He would be in the gym after everybody left. I think Kobe Bryant had the exact same type of work ethic as well, right? So we look at athletes for that. We look at people who entrepreneurs have gone out there. We look at the Amazons, we look at the Microsofts. They kind of started in the same thing. They started small, they grew themselves, they kept pushing and learning and understanding what people wanted, and kept growing their apps and their databases and whatnot, so they can eventually be where they are and now be part of everybody's life.
Yeah, think of like John Maxwell, because he's established himself as pretty much the leadership expert. I realize there are certainly others out there, and maybe some of you listening may not have even heard of John Maxwell. That's entirely possible, but he's dedicated, I don't know, 2 decades, 3 decades, something like that, of his life to writing books and leadership. And something that he talks about, and I don't even remember the exact steps, so it might be a little bit different, but he says every morning, he reads, he files quotes, he has like this list of things that he does every single morning to continue to learn, continue to develop, continue to think about leadership. Arguably some of his books recently are kind of the same stuff repackaged, but I guess we all maybe come to that point in our career, especially with a subject like that.
Well, for sure. And I think his goal was to write 100 leadership books, and I think the last time I heard him speak, he was somewhere in that 80 zone or something like that. So he had another 20 books that he wanted to put out, all on leadership, and I mean, he has put some great information out there. And yeah, some of the stuff that maybe he was saying in the 70s aren't as relevant to the 2000s right now, but maybe some of the stuff he was saying in the 70s has been rehashed and repackaged, and he can really show you different examples of how he can use that, right? But he's the kind of guy you think of that has understood where he fits in. Is he content with where he is? He might be, but he's not content on not hitting his goal. His goal is to put out those 100 books. So he may be happy where he is. He's comfortable. He's definitely got all the money. He goes and teaches leaders from all over the world and different countries and whatnot, but he continues to find ways to grow, and his attitude towards success is something that we could all emulate in our own lives. Maybe not to the same degree, because like we were talking earlier, we don't want to compare ourselves to it, but we can take those small daily steps the best we can and find those wins within ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. There's those few things. I think it's probably 5 things, because he likes that number, the rule of 5 and so forth. He does those same 5 things every single day, or whatever it is, to better himself as a leader. So it's part of his personal growth plan. It's also part of writing all those books that you talked about. So maybe for you, it's one thing. And I don't think John Maxwell spends hours doing all those things. I have a hard time believing it. Maybe he spends the first hour and a half of his day doing those things, and he has the time to spend with his family and travel and speak and all that kind of stuff too. So you have to see that the bigger picture perspective. But any of us can do one thing for 15 minutes every day. All of us can.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about just developing rituals that make sense for you, right? I know on previous episodes we've talked about meditation or walking in nature. Just finding really what works for you and contemplating the things that work for yourself, and then just implementing them into your life. Even just reading 2 pages a day or 3 pages a day. It's about being consistent and find ways. If you start doing things that get you consistent, I think in my personal viewpoint that you'll never be in a comfort zone. You'll never be in a place of being content or even being complacent once you get out of your comfort zone. And sometimes that's all it really means, is to find that consistency in your day-to-day activities negativity. And I think I just hissed my S on
Yes,
that one.
sibilance, I think they call it. Yeah, it's a problem with some singers too. So that's why they have de-essers.
There you go. I think I need a de-esser.
Yeah, you probably do for this episode. I think actually that's a really great thought to wind up on, though. So unless you have anything else,
no, just maybe let's do our quick final thoughts, kind of like a Jerry Springer type thing. And what are your final thoughts on the what we've been talking about?
Final thoughts. I think we've deconstructed pretty much the way of life I proposed at the beginning, and the ways that maybe it's a little bit different now that we've gone through this process of talking about it. Comfort as a temporary joy, contentment as a way of life, complacency as a pattern to avoid. Those might just be like general principles and not even principles that apply in every single situation, every single time. And contentment or peace with your situation can be very difficult to achieve, and I'm no stranger to that. So I think we've done a good job of presenting it from a few different angles to help everybody understand these differences better, and some of the warning sides, and also some of the positive things about each of them.
Right on. A great summary of the show, I think, that you've put together there, David, in your words there. One of the things that, in my closing, I guess I'd like to say, I think everything is a choice we have. We can decide if we want to better ourselves or stay where we want. I think, choosing the right friends, I know we can't choose our family members, but choosing the information we decide to take from our family is important. Our coworkers, they will either help us grow from where we are, or they'll want to keep us where we are, based on where they're happy being as well, right? So it's not just about where we are. We have to recognize these things. I think we need to understand if we put the right people in our lives, they can help us on our journey, whatever that journey may be. I hate to think that everybody is happy in being where they are. I think the people listening to this show want more than what they have right now.
I think so.
Maybe not today, but maybe 5 years from now, they want to have more, and they're going to continue to work for that, right? I think it's a choice where we decide to be and decide to stay, and it's also a choice to leave that place, right, whenever it is the right time for us. One of the things I will do for our listeners here is I challenge you. If you're in a place of being comfortable, if you're a place of being content, and if you're complacent in your life right now, I'm going to leave this for you. I challenge you to challenge yourself, and I challenge you to give yourself choices, and I challenge you to change yourself and see what that can bring you as soon as you step out of that comfort zone that you may be in.
Great summary. Love it. Well, thanks so much for listening. You can find us online at usingyourpower.com.
Thank you.